Hey everyone, how are you doing? I hadn't forgotten the tones. Just let's see, can I get it there? Hey, that sounds good. Nice and strong until it hits the other metal. Metal to metal. Heavy metal. Hmm. Anyway, how you doing? What a day. Just weird energy. Does that make sense? Just weird energy. That's all I can say. Just one of those days. Sometimes, it's like almost like gravity isn't working right. But we know that that's not true. Hey, everyone, just invoking favor upon you this day. Nothing missing, nothing broken. That's the how we roll here. And we speak it every day, and you should too. Should speak it to your body as well. So, hello. How is everybody? How is everyone? Hello there, Lois. Good to see you. Cajun Queen Tarot. Hello, Richard. Hello, all the moderators, everyone that's joining us. There's a few of us. In fact, if we were a restaurant, we'd be booked, sold out. Hello, Susie Q. How you doing, Rebecca? Good to see you. Casey. Hello, Lori. Hello, Naomi. Good to see you as well. What a day. I'm serious. Just been strange energy. And I guess that's to be expected, isn't it? Great to see you too, Twisted Isby. Hello. I had some tea, but boy, it is really hot. I mean, this is the kind of hot that would go, what happened? Again, just a series of events. I don't know. Hey, on Friday, Lisa Barnett is coming. We're going to be talking about memory, the Akashic record. I think it's going to fall in line with what we're going to be studying today. And I'm looking forward to this. I don't know what happens. I mean, I watch my life, and I'm sure yours is the same. Somewhere there is a record of everything we have said, probably everything we have done. Who knows? Maybe everything we've ever thought. I don't know. I mean, who knows? But apparently, hello, Viola. I contend there has to be something. There has to be some record. I mean, otherwise, we are in a cycle of futility. I mean, if memories are not retained, then what's the point? Is it just the experience? And then, hey, okay, I don't remember that. No, nope. How would you increase in knowledge? How would you grow in wisdom if you didn't have your memories? I mean, how could you, if you don't have your memories and they don't carry over, how would you have any identity of yourself? Who are you then? We are the Borg. Resistance is futile. Hey, Laura, good to see you as well. Yeah, strange energy indeed. It's weird. And I'm telling you, we got a good amount of snow coming in tonight and tomorrow here. And so I'm working on, besides the material here, also working on my snowblower. And I'm just seeing things that I'm going like, no, wait a minute. Is gravity, is it fluctuating? There, I'm telling you, it's just, yeah. But anyway, so I'll let you know tomorrow in the weather report how much snow we're going to get. Anyway, we can not handle the truth. I think that will go down in infamy, the famous line by Jack Nicholson. Great movie, by the way. I thought that was well played. Anyway, that's true. Can we handle the truth? I think we can. My wife and I were discussing last night this whole idea. Now, she sees death every day. I would say that she's probably one of the more experts on death. A lot of people talk about it, they study it, but my wife actually lives right next to it every day. And she has, over the years, seen patterns. And the one thing that seems to be Common is that memory. Now, if you are affected by Alzheimer's, dementia, I think that's the worst thing that could ever be pronounced on someone. I mean, there's a lot of diseases in this hell. In fact, tomorrow's program is going to be titled Welcome to Planet Earth, or should we say Planet Hell? I think this is hell. I really do. It appears to have all the indications of such a bizarre place. But in any case, getting back to what my wife observes is that two types of people. There are those who surrender and the transition is very smooth, and there's those who fight it. And it becomes a very long, drawn out process, both for the individual and the family as well. So it brings us to this point. As I said in the description, one thing that if you're listening to me, watching me, this is what you and I have in common. This is a common bond, is that we're in a place where no one gets out alive. No one. No thing apparently gets out alive. And that brings on the definition, then what's alive? What does that mean? Well, it's very bigoted in its approach because it's merely one-sided. It merely takes the physical, that which is seen, that which can be held, studied, observed. So alive, in that instance, by its definition, is very short-lived. I mean, think about it. I mean, you're not alive here very long. But in any case, each and every one of us, we have an appointment. It cannot be delayed. It cannot be put off. No matter what man thinks of transferring his consciousness to a machine, there is the physical death. The body is designed to simply disintegrate. Each and every one of us are disintegrating right now. You're getting older, and as many of us know, as the body continues to endure the wear and tear, it does show. I read today that there is a show in England. We have lost our freaking mind as a species, where the contestants play to win plastic surgery. That's another subject for another time. But in any case, I have always found it fascinating for myself because of my early childhood and the experiences that I went through and have retained myself all these many decades later, is that it begs the question, so what does happen? Religious indoctrination, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, all the isms that are out there all have an agenda. And that agenda is to keep you trapped. And we become trapped in it when we become ensnarled that we begin to think that that's truth. Now here, I don't push truth because I don't think we know what truth is. How can you know what truth is in a world of lies? And this is a world of lies. Homo sapiens sapiens are liars. We come by it naturally. And that is another topic for another time. We are by nature liars. We expect to be lied to. And in fact, that's how many people live their lives, is the fact that they lie, and so they expect to be lied to as well. That's a bizarre reality. So in the subject of truth, who is to say what is truth? Truth is relevant to the individual. It really is. You and I could study the same thing written on paper, but we're going to walk away with two different truths. And so in the journey of, well, my reasoning is this. All right, I've been here for a little over 23,000 days on this rock. Truth is only experiential. Yeah, that's so true. And what I have found fascinating is this: logic, reasoning, deducting, observational facts. We're going to be over there much longer than we've been here. And we don't have any memory of origins. Trina and I on our show yesterday was talking about, well, where's home? Where's home for the individual? Well, we're going to find out from a guy that he's a pretty far out dude, man. I mean, don't know where his head was exactly, but what I've read of his works, I have to say his head was in a very good place. Emanuel Swedenborg. And I find his approach to what happens that moment after to be unique. We'll read and we will continue to read. One day we're actually going to get into the Tibetan Book of the Dead. You know, we've discussed the Egyptian Book of the Dead. You know, there's so much that in a lot of those stories, for me, it's just real hard to get my mind wrapped around it. I can read the story. It's flowerful. It's amusing. It's colorful and descriptive. Do I think for a second that there is a real person named Thoth? You know, who knows? The problem we have is this gap now of nearly 2 millennia. Modern man doesn't know what magic is. Modern man doesn't know what God is. Modern man really doesn't know much. I think he knows a lot less than our ancestors did. We rely on machines. We rely on our machines to think for us, to rationalize thought for us, to synthesize thought. And, you know, we talked about the internet. I contend that the internet is God. At least for this world, this reality, this time. I have done video after video, breaking the God spell. We worship what? And I've yet to see anyone come and counter my hypothesis. The internet is God. And I'll tell you why. There is no God on this planet in any religion that can compete with the devotion humans give to the internet. Devotion is worship. Wherever your focus is on, that's where your devotion is at. You can't have worship without concentration, focus. And this thing we call the internet has now accomplished what no other worldly god of any religion has ever been able to do. It conquered us. And we give it our daily devotion. Now, you know, I know people say, well, there's a lot of good coming at it. Doesn't matter. If you studied hermeneutics, you understand good and bad doesn't matter. It's merely a degree. When does cold become noticeable warm? When does hot become noticeable cooler? It's just a degree. Good, bad. We get so wrapped up that we think we know what good is and we think we know what bad is. Yeah. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Deep thought for an audience, isn't it? All right. So I want to get into the books that we are. These are both on PDF. David said to folks, make sure you sign up and you stay and keep in touch on the Crystal Network. We're still getting the library. I don't know if that's up or not, but I think it's there or not. But in any case, that's going to be, it is an important link to all this. So in this book, this is called The Afterlife. And it is a condensed version of Swedenborg's work over here of heaven and hell. A masterpiece in itself. So we'll be referring back and forth of it, but the Afterlife really deals in issues. And Swedenborg was a cool cat. I mean, lived back in 1750s. The story of his works is amazing. In fact, we'll just go there. I think it's well worth us having the opportunity for those who have never actually understood how this all came about. We'll start right here. This is a cool, I mean, it's amazing. And as I'm starting to dig into it, I mean, they have the Swedenborg Foundation. It's linked right there below in the description. There's a lot that you could say on this, and there's a lot that has been said. All right, so in 1758, Emanuel Swedenborg brought a manuscript of his experience in heaven and hell to London, where he arranged for 1,000 copies to be printed. The book was written in Latin, and the authorship was anonymous, but it soon found its way to various countries and was translated into one language after another. Today, for example, the glossary Japanese version may be purchased in Tokyo and the Russian version in Moscow. Each country where the book is read has its own interesting story, usually involving voluntary translations by individuals who perform their task as kind of a public service. So how this thing got to America is really interesting. The first readers in England were scholarly folks able to read the Latin originally. I don't know anyone today where they can read Latin. I can read a little bit of it, and that's only from what I was taught in school. Unfortunately, it's not taught the way even when I was in school. Again, part of the digression of Homo sapiens. So a guy by the name of William Cockworthy, founder of the British porcelain industry. Now, Cockworthy at first was indignant that the book would claim to describe the afterlife, but upon reading it, undertook a personal mission to share this intriguing work with others. He brought it to the attention of a distinguished clergyman, Thomas Hartley, Victor of the Winwick Hartley. Victor of Winwick. Hartley also became convinced of the value of the book and collaborated with Cockworthy in translating it into English. Interesting. Printing of the first English version cost Hartley and Cockworthy 100 sterling pounds. And so in 1778, 20 years after the printing of the Latin original, English readers had access to heaven and its wonders and hell from things heard and seen. But how did copies of English reach America? This is really interesting. It happened because a ship's captain owned a copy of Heaven and Hell in Latin. During a transatlantic voyage, the captain met a Scottish passenger who was well versed in ancient language. The captain showed the Scotsman a copy of the rare volume. The year was 1781, and the Scottish passenger's name was James Glenn. Here's an account of what then transpired in the mid-Atlantic. Now, you need to keep in context here. The Bible is a modern book. It's less than 500 years old. It is what we would call Christianity, probably 2.0, maybe 3.0. It is not the original Christianity that was taught through the Vatican. And so once King James, and should I say Shakespeare, Sir Francis Bacon, did his magic trick in writing the Bible, you can see how the spell has gone everywhere. But it's very interesting when you have the opportunity to read the writings of individuals who basically were 100 years into modern Christianity at this point. And let's read what Mr. Glenn has to say. As soon as Mr. Glenn had read the work and well considered its contents, he was all astonishment, first at the nature of the information which that book conveys, and in the next place, at the goodness of the divine providence which had so unexpectedly brought him into such a peculiar situation, that while sailing on the surface of the great deep, his eyes were opened to behold an abyss of divine truth above and around him. That day, Mr. Glenn declared to be the happiest day of his life, which thus brought to his view the glories of a heavenly state and the stupendous realities of the eternal world. Wow. Now, think about that. So when he got to America, Glenn did, folks, let me just continue. When Glenn reached England, he learned that the book had been translated into English and made plans to introduce it to America. The shipment of books was sent to Bell's bookstore in Philadelphia, where on June 5th, 1784, Glenn gave the first public lecture promoting Swedenborg's testimony. Among those who attended the lecture was one Francis Bailey, a friend and neighbor of one Benjamin Franklin. Bailey was a printer by trade, and he became the first person to publish a book by Swedenborg in the United States. Another man at Glenn's lecture was John Young, a lawyer destined to become a prominent judge in Western Pennsylvania. When Young left Philadelphia, he took with him a supply of books. He befriended an enterprising fellow by the name of John Chapman and was able to provide him copies of Heaven and Hell. Chapman, who became known as Johnny Appleseed, was a nurseryman who distributed chapters of Heaven and Hell to settlers in their captains as he walked the Midwestern frontier. By giving a few pages at a time, Johnny reached people who might not read a whole volume, and this was a way of giving them a glimpse of what he called good news, right fresh from heaven. Individuals who were receptive to the good news were often moved to share it with others, and some collaborated in doing so. In 1849, an organization was established with a purpose expressed in 12 words: to encourage a wider circulation of the theological writings of Emanuel Swedenborg. The organization was called the American Swedenborg Printing and Publishing Society. In 1928, the name was changed to the Swedenborg Foundation. Wow. I want to stop right there for a second because, this is amazing stuff when you think about it. We get into this whole point where Johnny Appleseed. I mean, we've all heard of this, right? I have. I mean, I thought for many times it was a legend, but no, there really was a guy by the name of Johnny Appleseed. And to think he was not folks, presenting the Bible. No. Quite the opposite. He was sending out copies of heaven and its wonders and hell. Wow. I mean, think about that. You see, history, this is what fascinates me about eschatology, theology, philosophy, not even what most of us think of history. Most people think the Bible is a history book. I mean, they really do. I did for a while. It's a literacy book. It's just literary. It's a story set in a time. There's no history about it. But yet, people absolutely believe that, and this is what's happened. This is how fast things in culture, in memory, as a species, as a society that humans are, how quickly things change. They morph. The stories that were just stories become real. people would think that they are actually part of history. And the odd thing is that we will make history fit around our beliefs. So let's continue. This is good. I mean, it seems to me that there are obviously multiple paths, but here is a work that the founding fathers were introduced to. And, Benjamin Franklin was not a Christian. He was anything but, he was respectful of it. As he once said, what do you think of the Bible? He says, well, it depends on which gospel you read. There's 2 stories in the New Testament, depends on which one you want. Little clue. All right, let's get right back into this. I just thought that was amazing. So part 1 is the world of spirits and our state after death. So let's just see what Emanuel has to say. What the world of spirits is. The world of spirits is neither heaven nor hell, but a place or state between the two. It is where we first arrive after death, being in due time either raised into heaven or cast into hell from it, depending on our life in this world. Sounds pretty ominous, doesn't it? The world of spirits is a place halfway between heaven and hell, and it is also our own halfway state after death. There is a vast number of people in the world of spirits, because that is where everyone is first gathered, where everyone is examined and prepared. That's a strange word, examined, isn't it? I'm going to look forward to see what he has to say on that. There is no fixed limit to our stay there. Some people barely enter it and are promptly either taken up into heaven or cast down into hell. Well, I'm not liking this one bit, are you? Some stay there for a few weeks, some for a number of years, though not more than 30. That's interesting. The variations in length of stay occur because of the correspondence or lack of correspondence between our deeper and our more outward natures. In the following pages, I will be explaining just how we are led from one state into another and prepared. After we die, just as soon as we arrive in the world of spirits, we are carefully sorted out by the Lord. Now, we discussed this yesterday. I don't know who this Lord is. Now, some people say, well, it's the Lord Jesus Christ. I ain't buying that crap for a second. Only because of the fact that it can't be truthful in the fact of the name. The name is a modern day invention. So I don't know who the Lord is. I have a problem when I read the Lord in capital letters because I know in my linguistic studies that Lord literally translates ball. So I don't know. Again, you see, this is why we read, this is why we discuss, this is why we talk about this. So I'm willing to accept that there is a presence that would be called the Lord. And I'm sure that in due time, if what Emanuel writes here, I'm sure I'll be examined. Evil people are immediately connected with the hellish community. Their ruling love and affection, the hellish community, their ruling love had affiliated them with in the world. And good people are immediately connected with the heavenly community. Their love and thoughtfulness and faith had affiliated them within the world. It's odd English there. Even though we are sorted out in this way, we are still together in that world and can talk to anyone we want to friends and acquaintances from our physical life, especially husbands and wives, and also brothers and sisters. I have seen a father talking with his 6 sons and recognizing them. I have seen many other people with their relatives and friends. However, since they were of a different character because of their life in the world, they parted company after a little while. Pretty strange, isn't it? Because if you begin to incorporate the thought of incarnation, reincarnation, well, and if you study the theories of time, if I've been here multiple lifetimes, then how does this cycle through? It would indicate that there isn't, or maybe there is. I don't know. We're going to find out. However, people who are coming into heaven from the world of spirits and people who are coming into hell do not see each other anymore. They do not even recognize each other unless they are of like character because of a likeness in love. All right, let's stop here. This is class. I contend if I was to write into the side notes, this sounds like memory wiping. Now, I can get the idea of frequencies. I can get the idea of, but a mother who loves her son or her daughter, who because of choices, one would be going up, one would be going down. Are you telling me that her love is going to be wiped away? The memory? You see, folks, this is why we study. We analyze everything. So I got a problem with that one right there, but that's all right. Let's continue. The reason they see each other in the world of spirits, but not in heaven or hell, is that while they are in the world of spirits, they are brought into states like the ones that they were in during their physical lives, one after another. After a while, though, they settle into a constant state that accords with them their ruling love. In this state, mutual recognition comes only from similarity of love, for likeness unites and differences separate. This gets back to my whole debate that we had a couple of weeks ago. You're telling me that imperfection is birth out of perfection? How does that work? But here it's stating that likeness unites and differences separates. In these pages where it says spirits, it means people in the world of spirits, while angels mean people in heaven. It's an interesting take that he has on angels. Each of us is inwardly a spirit. Anyone who thinks things through carefully can see that it is not the body that thinks, because the body is material. Rather, it is the soul, because the soul is spiritual. The human soul, whose immortality has been the topic of many authors, is our spirit. It is, in fact, immortal in all respects, and it is also what does the thinking in our bodies. No matter that is proper to the body is an addendum. The matter that is proper to the body is an addendum and almost an attachment to the spirit. Its purpose is to enable our spirit to lead its life and perform its services in the natural world that is material in all aspects and essentially lifeless. Wow. That is heavy right there. And I can see that. Since matter is not alive, only spirit, we may conclude that whatever is alive in us is our spirit, and that the body only serves it's exactly the way a tool serves a live and activating force. Since everything that is alive in the body, everything that acts and feels because of life belongs to the spirit alone, and none of it belongs to the body. It follows that the spirit is the actual person. In other words, we are essentially spirits and have much the same form as well. You see, everything that is alive and sensitive within us belongs to our spirit, and there is nothing in us from head to toe that is not alive and sensitive. This is why when our bodies are separated from our spirits, which is called dying, we still continue to be human and to be alive. Now, I want to stop right here. Let's discuss there a second. You see, I get the fact of what Emanuel is saying. I've read many accounts of this. I've been in lectures where people have died and gone to heaven and come back and given their testimonies. And the one thing that I haven't found here is the reality that sapiens are just merely a genus of man. So am I to take, the reader here is to take this, that basically Neanderthals stay Neanderthals, sapiens stay sapiens, and the two shall never meet in between? I don't know. It's something that I consider when I read a story that is saying that this is what awaits us. My wife told me one time, she says, I'm sure when you arrive, they'll be ready. We may gather that inwardly we are spirits from the fact that after we depart our bodies, which happens when we die, we are still alive and just as human as ever. To convince me of this, the Lord, this is in brackets, has allowed me to talk with almost all the people I had ever met during their physical lives, with some for a few hours, and some for a few weeks and months, and some for years. That gives me another thing. All right, so time is then very relevant, and time is based upon the orbit that the Earth does to the sun. I mean, is someone got the clock there and it's going second, tick, 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 tick? These are the things that I think about. This was primarily so that I could be convinced and could bear witness. I may add here that even while we are living in our bodies, each one of us is in a community with spirits as to our own spirit, even though we are unaware of it. Trina and I talked about this, and folks, now this is where it gets interesting when you begin to think multidimensional. So, as Lilith told us, the autogen, the heavenly man that represents man overall, lives always in the heavenly realm, and then there is yet that extension that lives into the physical. Now, this is some interesting meditative topics for each of us. I wonder if it's possible, but I don't know. Could we actually breach that membrane to get more in tune to the community that we're with? I don't know. He goes on to say, good people are in an angelic communities by means of their spirits, and evil people are in the hellish communities. Further, we come into those same communities when we die. People who are coming into the company of spirits after death are often told and shown this. Our revival from the dead and entry into eternal life. When someone's body can no longer perform its function in the natural world, in response to the thoughts and affections of the spirit, which it derives from the spiritual world, then we say that the individual has died. This happens when the lungs, breathing, and the heart, systolic motions have ceased. The person, though, has not died at all, We are only separated from the physical nature that was useful to us in this world. The essential person is actually still alive. I say that the essential person is still alive because we are not people because of our bodies, but because of our spirits. After all, it is the spirit within us that thinks, and thought and affection together make us the people we are. We can see then that when we die, we simply move from one world into another. This is why in the inner meaning of the word death means resurrection and a continuation of life. The deepest communication of our spirit is with our breathing and our heartbeat. Thought connects with our breathing, and affection, an attribute of love, with our heart. Consequently, when these two motions in the body cease, there is an immediate separation. It is these two motions, the respiratory motion of the lungs and the static motion of the heart, that are essentially tied together. Once they are severed, the spirit is left to itself, and the body, being now without the life of its spirit, cools and decays. After this separation, our spirit stays in the body briefly, but not after the complete stoppage of the heart, which varies depending on the cause of death. In some cases, the motion of the heart continues for quite a while, and in others, it does not. The moment it does stop, we are awakened, but this is done by the Lord alone. Being awakened means having our spirit led out of our body and into the spiritual world, which is commonly called resurrection. Now, isn't this an interesting, different take? I mean, in my indoctrination over decades, I had a complete different view of resurrection. Not like this, but as I'm reading this, well, that's exactly what it is. Isn't it interesting as well that it is the Lord that allows our spirit to finally be free? I contend that there are probably many restraints upon us, that if we truly knew what was awaiting us, that it would be a whole different story. Think about it. It's quite interesting. The reason our spirit is not separated from our body until the motion of the heart is stopped is that the heart answers to affection, an attribute of love, which is our essential life. Since all of us derive our vital warmth from love, consequently, as long as this union lasts, there is a responsiveness, and therefore the life of the spirit is still in the body. I have not only been told how the awakening happens, I have been shown by firsthand experience. Wow. The actual experience happened to me so that I could have a full knowledge of how it occurs. I was brought into a state in which my physical senses were inoperative, very much then like the state of people who are dying. However, my deeper life and thought remained intact, so that I could perceive and retain what was happening to me, and what does happen to people who are being awakened from death. I noticed that my physical breathing was almost suspended, with a deeper breathing, a breathing of the spirit, continuing along with a very slight and silent physical one. At first, then a connection was established between my heartbeat and the heavenly kingdom, because that kingdom corresponds to the human heart. I also saw angels from that kingdom, some at a distance, but two sitting close to my head. The effect was to take away all my affection, but to leave me in possession of thought and perception. I remained in this state for several hours. The closest thing I could probably say to that those of you who've experienced it, how many of you have experienced night paralysis? And I would probably say the state of paralysis itself. Yeah. Then the spirits who were around me gradually drew away, thinking that I was dead. I sensed a sweet odor like that of an embalmed body. For when heavenly angels are present, anything having to do with a corpse smells sweet. When spirits sense this, they cannot come near. This is also how evil spirits are kept away from our spirit when we are being admitted into eternal life. The angels who were sitting beside my head were silent, simply sharing their thoughts with mine. When these are accepted by the deceased, the angels know that the person's spirit is ready to be led out of the body. They accomplish this sharing of thoughts by looking into my face. This is actually how thoughts are shared in heaven. Very important. They accomplish this sharing of thoughts by looking into your face. The windows, what? Are the openings to the soul? Since I had been left in possession of thought and perception so that I could learn and remember how awakening happens, I noticed that at first the angels were checking to see whether my thoughts were like those of the dying individuals who were normally thinking about eternal life. They wanted to keep my mind in these thoughts. I was later told that as the body is breathing its last, our spirit is kept in its final thought until eventually it comes back to the thoughts that flowed from our basic or ruling affection in the world. Especially, I was enabled to perceive and even to feel that there was a pull, a kind of drawing out of the deeper levels of my mind, and therefore of my spirit from my body. I was told that this was being done by the Lord and is what brings about our resurrection. When heavenly angels are with people who have been awakened, they do not leave them because they love everyone. But some spirits are simply unable to be in the company of heavenly angels very long and want them to leave. When this happens, angels from the Lord's spiritual kingdom arrive, through whom we are granted the use of light. Since before this we could not see anything, but could only think. I was also shown how this was done. It seemed as though the angel rolled back a covering from my left eye towards the center of my nose, so that my eye was opened and able to see. Wow, that resonates. To the spirit, it seems as though this was actually happening, but it is only apparently so. As this covering seemed to be rolled back, I could see a kind of clear but dim light, like the light we see through our eyelids when we first are waking up. It seemed to me as though this clear, dim light had a heavenly color to it, but I was later told that this varies. After that, it felt as though something were being rolled gently off my face, and once this was done, I had access to spiritual thought. This rolling something off the face is an appearance, for it represents the fact that we are moving from natural thinking to spiritual thinking. Angels take the greatest of care to shield the awakening person from any concept that does not taste of love. Then they tell the individual that he or she is a spirit. After the spiritual angels have given us the use of light, they do everything for us as newly arrived spirits that we could ever wish in that state. They tell us, at least to the extent that we can grasp it, about the realities of the other life. However, if our nature is such that we do not want to be taught, then once we are awakened, we want to get out of the company of angels. Still, the angels do not leave us, but we do leave them. Angels really do love everyone. They want nothing more than to help people, to teach them, to lead them to heaven. This is their highest joy. When the spirits leave the company of angels, they are welcomed by the good spirits who are accompanying them and also who do all they can for them. However, if they had led the kind of life in the world that makes it impossible for them to be in the company of good people, then they want to get away from these as well. This happens as long and as many times as necessary until they find the company of people their earthly life has fitted for them. Here they find their life, and remarkable as it may sound, they then lead the same kind of life they had led in the world. Wow. This first stage of our life after death does not last more than a few days, though. In the following pages, I will be describing how we are then brought from one state into another until finally we arrive either in heaven or in hell. I have talked with some people on the third day after their death. I talked with 3 whom I had known in the world and told them that their funeral service were now being planned so that their bodies could be buried. When they heard me say it was so that they could be buried, they were struck with a kind of bewilderment. They said that they were alive and that people were burying what had been useful to them in the world. Later on, they were utterly amazed at the fact that while they had been living in their bodies, they had not believed in this kind of life after death, and particularly that this was the case for almost everyone. From death, we are in complete human form. Years and years of daily experience have witnessed to me that after separation from the body, the human spirit is a person and is in similar form. I have seen this thousands of times. I have heard such spirits. I have talked with them, even about the fact that people in the world do not believe that they are what they are, and that scholars think people who do not believe are simpletons. Spirits are heartsick over the fact that this kind of ignorance is still common in the world and especially in the church. Wow. Wow. This is why almost all the people who arrive from this world are as astonished as they can be to find that they are alive and that they are just as human as ever, that they are seeing, hearing, and talking, that their bodies are still endowed with the sense of touch, and that nothing at all has changed. Wow. When we first entered the world of spirits, which happens shortly after the reawakening just described, our spirit has a similar face and tone of voice as it did in the world. This is because at the point we are in the state of our external concerns, with our deeper concerns not yet uncovered. This is our initial state after decease. Later, though, our face changes and becomes quite different. It comes to look like the ruling affection in which the deeper reaches of our mind were engaged in the world. The kind of affection characteristics of the spirit within the body, because the face of our spirit is very different from the face of our body. We get our physical face from our parents and our spiritual face from our affection, which it images. Our spirit takes on this face after our physical life is over. Our spirit takes on this face after our physical life is over when the outer covering have been removed. This is the third state. I have seen some newcomers from the world and have recognized them by their faces and voices, but when I saw them later, I did not recognize them. People who were engaged in good affections had lovely faces, while people who were engaged in evil affection had ugly ones. Seen in its own right, our spirit is nothing but our affections, whose outward form is our face. The reason our face changes is that at the other life, no one is allowed to pretend to affections they do not really have. So we cannot put on a face that is contrary to the love we are engaged in. We are all refined down to a state in which we say what we think and manifest in expression and act what we intend. It does not need to be known that our human form is lovelier after death to the extent that we have more deeply loved divine truths and have lived in them, since our deeper levels are open and form according to both our loves of these truths and our life. So the deeper the affection and the more it accords with heaven, the lovelier the face. This is why the angels who are in the innermost heaven are of the loveliest, because they are forms of heavenly love. On the other hand, people who have loved divine truths more outwardly and have therefore lived them more outwardly are less lovely, since only the more outwardly aspects radiate from their faces, and the deeper heavenly love, which means the form of heaven as it is in its own right, does not shine through these more outward forms. You can see something relatively dim in their faces, not enlivened by a light of their inner light of life shining through. In short, all perfection increases as you move inward and lessens as you move outward. As the perfection increases or lessens, so does the body. We'll just break it off right there. We're going to pick this up tomorrow. I think you can begin to see, though, this is an amazing read. I don't know if it is, in fact, that way, but this is probably the most descriptive I have ever read. It far supersedes the Bible, the Quran, the Vedic. This is far beyond that. This is the first time that I've really read something that had truth in the fact that it's describing a progression, a process. I mean, most of us think that, death, boom, you're out of the spirit, you go to the light, and, whatever happens after that. And we're going to find out that hell is not this place of torment. It is not. It is a lower level of thought, but I think in many cases, folks, from what I've read, I think it represents Earth almost to a T. I could be wrong, but it seems like very much the spirit realm, at least for humans, may be different for aliens, because I haven't read anything where Emanuel said he met. There are other spirits on other planets. There's a whole book on that. But apparently, humans are humans. I guess Orions are Orions. Palladians are Palladians. It seems to be that way. Which leads me to almost think as well that I wonder if they have their own version of the Lord, their own version of heaven, hell. I mean, I haven't met any Palladians that I think of. Thank you, Regina. I don't know. Folks, we're going to get into this. There is freedom in this. And there is an opportunity for each and every one of us to better our condition inwardly here. And if we can do the inside job properly, with honesty, seeing our faults, seeing our flaws, but recognizing that love, forgiveness, speaking favor into other people's lives, that's a higher vibration. And we're going to be beautiful, baby. I'm just telling you. I'm going to see you up there, and I'm going to, let's have some tea and let's talk. I don't know. It seems like this is the time of preparation. And it makes you just want to be kinder. Makes you want to go out and do acts of goodness that no one knows about. Do that, folks. I try to do it regularly, to do something that no one else knows about that's going to benefit someone else. What is it that it says? A wise man stores his treasures in heaven, not here on earth. I'd rather have an account overflowing up there than here, because you can't take this here up there, but that which we are putting up there will be awaiting us. Oh yeah, baby. And I think rock and roll is in heaven. I can see the Lord boogieing, doing a little bit of Saturday Night Fever. That's what I'm talking about. Staying alive, baby. All right, folks, I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in. This has been fun. I've enjoyed this. I hope you have too. We're learning. And I think this is an opportunity where we don't get, basically into a cell, and segregated, that we can actually come in here and get to learn together. And, I'd like to see all of us continue afterwards. If I get there ahead of you or you get ahead of me, be nice to say, hey, Steiger, and I'll say, hey, Wayne, how you doing? All right. Appreciate it, folks. I just speak favor and joy into your lives. Let it manifest in some way. And if things begin to get, weird, just start laughing. Laughter is the medicine that does the heart and the spirit the best. All right, folks, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.